Welcome back in to the Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry. This is a lecture series on Freemasonry through the light of Catholicism. I am your instructor, David L. Gray, Master of Arts in Theology, and the author of the Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry. So we begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Before we begin, if you would like to go ahead and download the PDF for this course so you can follow along. For the PowerPoints, because some of the PowerPoints they do not translate well to the online, to the screen presentation here. So, but if not, you do not have to. It's completely voluntary. I will be reading each of the slides and interpret them if you just want to sit back and watch and listen to what you see. This is our third and last deep dive into the sacraments of Freemasonry, the 3 degrees, apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason. So the third sacrament of Freemasonry is the master mason degree, through which the initiate is raised to a sublime degree of master mason and participates in the death and raising of Hiram Abiff. So that's what we'll be looking at here, and how what's irreconcilable with this degree. And as in the previous ones, this is really going to follow the same format, right? We're looking at what the popes have taught. We're not deviating from that, because these are the theological issues that we're focusing on at the moment. Later on down the road, we'll take a look at the political issues and discuss those. But for now, we're looking at Pope Clement XII and Leo XIII, and they're the 3 theological objections that they laid out. There's naturalism, indifferentism, and the oaths. That's it. That's the criteria by which we judge Freemasonry and say it's incompatible with Catholicism. So we're going to do the same thing that we've done in the past. I'm going to give you a brief outline of the 3rd degree, and then we'll get into specifically see, okay, what's here is promoting indifferentism, what's promoting naturalism, and let's take a look at the oath. If you're not binge watching this, you're not watching back to back. I'll go ahead and I'll recap those things. I won't presuppose that you remember all those things. I'll go ahead and I'll recap some of the areas in the definitions and the concerns that we have. Okay. So let's go take a look here. So the overall points of conflict with the 3rd degree. So the Master Mason degree is the highest degree in what's properly called craft Freemasonry. If you remember my lecture on the structure of Freemasonry, I talked about how from the beginning I distinguish between what is craft freeness of the Masonry versus the Masonic degrees. Okay, so the highest officer in the Grand Lodge is the Grand Master. The highest officer in the local lodge is a worshipful master. You cannot belong to any other Masonic body unless you have your 3rd degree. Okay, but all those other Masonic bodies exist at the will of the Grand Master. So the Master Mason degree is the highest degree in Freemasonry. Okay. But all the other different bodies have their own grading system. Okay, but that doesn't really mean anything for us what craft Freemasonry is concerned. So all other grades would only add more light to what the Freemason has received through this sacrament called sublime. So here in the 3rd degree, the Master Mason degree, the initiate has advanced to the climax of his journey and is now able to do the work of a Master Mason and earn his own wages. Yet he is presented with a great problem. His master has been slain without giving him the one secret that he has long desired: the name of God. The legend of Hiram Abiff, albeit different in the Anglo versus Continental systems, is a great mystery of Freemasonry, but really follows the death and burial event that we find in many initiation rites since the beginning of time. So that's the Master Mason degree. That's where we're going to be looking at. That's the summary. And now let's take a look at the conflicts. Okay. Before we get there, let's just recap Pope Clement XII in 1738. You see in the middle of the paragraph, he pointed out all these Masonic orders are spreading far and wide and daily growing in strength. And then he notes the issue of indifferentism. And men of any religion or sect, right? They're not peculiar at all in who they bring in. They're just bringing all these different men of different religions, blending them together. And then on top of that, they're pursuing this thing called natural virtue, right? So they're trying to supplant religion, the church, through this idea of indifferentism and pursuing naturalism. Okay, so indifferentism and naturalism. And down at the bottom, he says, both by an oath upon the Bible and by a host of grievous punishments, to an inviolable silence about what they do together in secret. So, and then in Humanum Genus, Pope Leo XIII builds upon that 1884 about this issue about naturalism, namely the utter overthrow of that whole religious and political order of the world which the Christian teaching has produced, and the substitution of a new state. Today he would say New World Order or Great Reset, of things in accordance with their own ideas, of which the foundations and laws shall be drawn from mere naturalism. So these are the sticking points. This is the narrow window by which we have to critique Freemasonry and prove that it's incompatible with Catholicism, that it's teaching indifferentism, naturalism, and we have some issues with the oaths that they would offer in the name of God. Indifferentism, naturalism, and the oaths. In the first lecture series, I pointed out how the difficulty here for me was really to streamline this for you and to leave out, to extrapolate out what came over from the guild system and what is unique to the philosophy of Freemasonry. So I've tried to do that. I tried to really keep this as simple as I can without really having to deal with all the variations that you find from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, because I ought to do a little bit something different. And I don't want to leave you out there in a trick bag when you're trying to evangelize a Freemason and you're bringing up stuff that's jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So what you're hearing me saying, what I'm saying about the ritual is really as streamlined as I can get it. And then I do bring up some things that I have to let you know that, okay, this isn't universal across the board. This one thing, like I was talking about in the previous sessions about the candidate being walking around in his underwear versus walking around in his pants pulled up, right? His pants legs pulled up. So, right. And also, I'm sticking with the Catholic objection here, the Catholic objection on indifferentism, naturalism, and the oaths. We can go down a lot of rabbit holes in showing how this is Freemasonry, the philosophy is completely anti-Christian. But again, now it puts you off in a trick bag, and I don't really want to do that. So this is the Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry. This isn't the David Catechism on Freemasonry. This is the Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry. This is what the church would be teaching is irreconcilable. Okay. So let's recap the definition of indifferentism. So the Catholic Church believes and teaches that there is no salvation outside of a church, extra ecclesiam nulla salus, and therefore that the Catholic Church is the fullness of truth. This belief does not limit God who God saves. Salvation belongs to God and the Lamb of God, as the book of Revelation says, but proclaims that Christ and his church are the given paths to salvation. Okay, that is not the preferred option, as some theologians would say, or the preferential option, as some theologians would say, but it is the path to the gift of salvation that God has given us. There's no other path that we know about, because Jesus Christ didn't speak of another path. He said, anyone who wants to come through the Father is through me. That's all we know, right? Now, if God wants to go around and look at the heart of a Hebrew person or a Muslim person, and that's God's business, okay? But ultimately, it would be through Christ that person is judged in the end, okay? So God knows hearts, we don't, okay? He knows all about invincible ignorance and all this stuff to depths that we can never imagine. He knows he's known each soul from the foundation of the earth. So as Catholics, we do not go around talking about multiple paths of salvation, because those things that we do not know. All that we do know is what God has given us. That is extra ecclesiam nala salus. There's no salvation outside the church. Why? Because Christ was established. He established a church for our salvation. He came. He spoke. He is the last voice, the last thing that God had to say through man is through his son. And all that we know is that he established a church and gave us sacraments for our salvation. Okay. So we don't play around and try to pretend that there's something else outside of that. Okay. So indifferentism would offer something else. Would say that there are multiple paths. That the idea that they would teach that one religion is good enough, as good as another. That all religions are equally valid, paths to salvation. And this is antithetical to what Jesus Christ revealed and what the Catholic Church taught. Soteriology. This is one of my that's always been one of my biggest critiques of the popular apologist movement, Catholic apologists, arguing with these Protestants. When you argue with people, the people who you're arguing with, they and people who are watching, they leave an impression that what they had to say was just as valuable as what you had to say, that these are just two competing ideas. That promotes indifferentism. No, what you're teaching is a lie, and what I'm teaching is the truth. And if you do say something's true, I agree with that, because what we have is the fullness of truth, right? So the Catholic really doesn't have a conversation to have with people who don't know the full truth. Only thing we can do is lead them to the fullness of truth and show them what they believe is just partially true and what they believe is lie. So I find it silly that we argue and bicker and debate people who are beneath us, in the sense that we have the fullness of truth. So what are we talking about? What are you talking about? All right. Let's just talk about what is true and leave the lies where they are. Otherwise, we're promoting just indifferentism, these competing ideas. But that's what Freemasonry is doing. Remember, we're going back to Anderson's Constitution and the historical thing. There was a lot of different competing religions going on in England at this time. Because of that, there's a lot of disputes, a lot of arguments in the guild and the lodge. The voting system is nasty. People don't want to belong to this lodge because there's a bunch of Puritans there, or a bunch of Anglicans in there, or these people have these political beliefs and we don't. So you have a lot of different guilds of Freemasons going around, and you have so many because of these disputes over religion and politics. So the answer of Freemasonry to get rid of this and to restore harmony, like the guild system was when it's just Catholic, was to let's put religion and politics away, and let's just focus on what is true, what we can agree with. This is really just bad ecumenism. This is Freemasons invented bad ecumenism, but that's what we see here. This universal brotherhood based upon the lie, all right, of indifferentism. But that's what's going on. That's the break from the guild system. And at its core, that is the key teaching of Freemasonry is indifferentism, and it spread like wildfire. We first saw it with Protestantism. Protestantism, the religion itself, and I don't call Protestantism a religion. I call it an anti-religion. That's what it is. It's not even a real religion, because they don't have their own beliefs. They have what they believe is what they reject from what the Catholic Church is teaching. So it's an anti-religion. It's a religion against the religion. So, but it's really the foundation of relativism and secularism and indifferentism. Freemasonry picks it up and takes it to a whole new level and spreads it around the globe. And this is why Freemasonry has always been more healthy in Protestant countries than it was in Catholic or Muslim countries, right? Because indifferentism and relativism is okay. It's the flavor of the day in Protestant countries. Okay, so Freemasonry always spreads more abundantly in Protestant countries because its sister Protestantism and it think very much alike. So, what elements remain from the previous degrees? Okay, or the master into the Master Mason degree. So, again, this is a continuation. All right, so they're still blindfolded. They're still partially clothed. In the inner apprentice degree, the right breast is exposed. In a fellow craft degree, the left breast is exposed. Now, the candidate has both breasts exposed. Okay. And now the cable toe and independence degree, the cable toe was once around their arm or neck. Fellowcraft degree is twice. Now it's three times. Right. So this again, this matriculation, this advancement. Okay. So the Master Mason initiate is received upon the points of a compass extending from both breasts. In the independence degree, it was a point of a sharp instrument. In the Fellowcraft degree, it was a point of a square. Now in the Master Mason degree is a compass extending to both naked breasts, which is to teach the initiate that as the vital parts of man are contained within his breast, so the most excellent tenets of the institution of Freemasonry are contained within the points of the compass, which are three: friendship, morality, and brotherly love. We could also put this section here back in naturalism, right? Again, here's Freemasonry really trying to form the conscience based upon just what is natural, a compass, a little metal instrument, which is supposed to teach friendship, morality, and brotherly love, not divine revelation, not the scriptures, but these points that can be interpreted any way. So there's no magisterium, no authority here teaching these things. It's just this interpretation of what this thing from nature, this compass, is supposed to teach us: indifferentism and naturalism. So the candidate still goes through. Now he goes around a lodge, not one time, not two times in the Fellowcraft degree, but now three times he goes around a lodge, blindfolded, with two pairs of shoes or slippers on his feet rather than one, not two, but both feet covered. And then he takes his obligation on the altar, and then his blindfold is lifted, and now he sees that the three great lights of Masonry are all there, but now they look different. In the first degree, the square was on top of the compass. In the Fellowcraft degree, one point of the compass was above the square. Now in the Master Mason degree, both points of the compass rest on top of the square. And this is the Masonic symbol that you see throughout the world. Is the Master Mason symbol of the square and compass, with both points of the compass raised above the square, which is to teach the initiate to never lose sight of those truly Masonic virtues, again, which are friendship, morality, and brotherly love. So this idea of the compass teaching these things are imprinted upon a candidate at the opening when he comes through the door. It's pressed to his chest. And now here again after his obligation. Friendship, morality, and brotherly love. Okay, the key principles in Freemasonry that made it possible for them to say that your personal religion is just your opinion. What we're working on here is friendship, morality, and brotherly love, right? And to establish those, to keep those in place, we have to exclude all your political and all your religious talk. We're just going to focus on Masonry here, right? Indifferentism. Also, they're taught to wear their apron now as a Master Mason. As an apprentice, the flap of the apron was turned up. Fellowcraft, the bottom point, the flap was turned down, and the lower left-hand corner was raised and tucked in the middle. So the apron looked like a V shape. And now the apron is, it looks, is flat, right? It looks like you see out in public how a Mason would wear their apron. Okay. Again, this is external covering, the lambskin apron. This is, it's really just in building upon the Protestant idea that the lamb covers you. It doesn't change you from the inside. There's no regeneration here from the lamb. It just covers you. It just protects you. It doesn't change you. But these changes in the degree are really meant to symbolize advancement and matriculation into more light. Right? Again, Gnosticism and the secret mysteries. Now, the key points of indifferentism in the Master Mason degree, the height of indifferentism towards religion, is this imaginary, this fictional character called Hiram Abiff. So, common feature in all, many initiation rites of tribes and even fraternities is the idea of death and burial, right? This new creation. Hmm. So the legend of Hiram Abiff of King Solomon Temple, it appears to be an amalgamation of various legends down through the ages, together with biblical texts to fit into the theme and purpose of the Master Mason degree, which is to signal to the candidate that the work of a Master Mason is never over until his labors on earth are completed and he finally receives his reward, his wages in heaven. Okay. So if you have my book, the Catholic Catechism of Freemasonry, you read the drama of the Master Mason degree. You read it in the section on Freemasonry as a religion. But if you don't have it, that's fine, because I'm going to reread it here for the purposes that we're covering here so that nothing is lost. So, being that the guilds of Europe were popularly known for the public plays, it's not surprising that Freemasonry would also move to convey its mysteries through myth, drama, pageantry, and allegory, in a manner that explains to initiates how the religion came to be. Right? So during the third degree, the initiate is also obligated to know about some of the important intricacies of the building of King Solomon's temple, such as names, dimensions, ornaments, and pillars outside the temple. According to the myth of Freemasonry, there were 15 fellowcrafts at the building King Solomon's temple, who were given charge over other fellowcrafts and apprentices. When the building of the temple was nearly complete, the 15 began to sense that they might be cheated out of the secrets of a Master Mason, that is, the passwords and signs that would give them a higher wage in continental Freemasonry. Okay. So again, there's a distinction here between continental and Anglo. All right. So, but in the Anglo, so the secrets of Master Masons is that which have been promised and organized. So they had these group of 15 feeling that they may be cheated out of the wages of Master Mason. They organized a conspiracy to obtain them by any means necessary, even violence. When hour came to execute their grand scheme, the 12 of the 15 recanted of their machinations, but the others, Jubilah, and Jubilum, more savory than the other 12, moved forward with their impious designs to take what had been promised to them, in which they felt entitled to. Knowing their master, Hiram Abiff, had a pattern of retiring at the hour of high 12 to make a devotion to the Most High, they went to lay wait for him at the east, north, and south entrances of the temple. After Hiram Abiff finished his devotions, he attempted to return back to his labors by entering through the south entrance and was accosted by the first ruffian, whose heavy plumb rule working tool. He used the heavy plumb rule working tool to threaten Hiram Abiff's life should he not disclose to the ruffian the secrets of a Master Mason. Hiram Abiff did not lie when he told the ruffian that the secret was only known to 3 people in the world. It was himself, Hiram, the king of Tyre, who you do read about in the Bible, and King Solomon, who is actually there in the scriptures at the building King Solomon's temple. And by obligation, he could not reveal to the ruffian the secret, even if it costed him his life. Rather, Hiram Abiff pleaded with the ruffian that he would just be patient. He would receive what was promised to him once the building of the temple was completed. Not satisfied with his answer, the ruffian aimed a violent blow at the forehead of Hiram, but missed, striking his right temple instead. Hiram fell down on his left knee and found way to escape to the north entrance, where he was accosted by a second ruffian who wielded a level as an instrument of death and demanded from Hiram Abiff the secrets of a Master Mason. When you're going through the ritual, it can depend upon jurisdiction. This part gets rather rough, right? As was the case when I was being initiated. Each station you go to, you're running around a lodge, running for your safety, and yeah, you're blindfolded, by the way, and you're running, and next thing you know, boom, someone like grabs you up and starts shaking you, right? And starts threatening your life. It is actually rather scary, right? It sounds sort of banal and as I'm reading the drama, but when you're physically going through it, it's rather scary. You start to think, man, these people might take my life, and you kind of want to give up the secrets. But you don't know what they are. So the person leading you around is usually the senior deacon. And he's the one speaking on your behalf because you don't know what to say. You're just in a drama, but someone is saying your parts for you. And so you have the ruffian there saying, "Give me the secrets of Master Mason," and then the senior deacon, he's speaking for you, saying, "No, I cannot until the building is completed. Give me the secrets of Master Mason, I will take your life." No, I do not have them, and even if I did, I did. The secret can only be said in the presence of three: King Solomon, Hiram, King of Tyre, and myself. Give me the secret master, and I take your life. He says, "No, and I cannot, I will not." And then at that point, whatever station you at, they take that instrument of death and they strike you with it. Right? Depending upon your jurisdiction, it may be physical, extremely, or not physical. So I've been in places when you get to the last station where Hiram Abiff's life is actually taken, and they're throwing the candidate up on a mat, like high up into the sky, like boom, boom, you know, and because he's hit with a maul, boom. It's like really and I've seen some places, some jurisdiction have an actual boxing glove, and boom, the candidate is hit in the head when he doesn't get a secret up at that last station. And then he's thrown back into this canvas. And then you have a lot of brothers there, members of the lodge, who they would then throw the candidate up in the air like 3 times. And I've seen places where the candidate, they sort of lost sight when he's up in the air. The candidate comes down, boom, busts his leg. So people have been knocked out physically, from that setting maul or that boxing glove, right? So it gets rather physical. It really does. So Hiram also refused the second ruffian, just as the first. And this one too attempted to land a fatal blow on the master by striking him on the left temple. With the level. So Hiram, he falls down, this time on his right knee, first time was left knee, but he's able to flee to the east entrance, okay, where the third ruffian is stationed. So after refusing to divulge the secrets of Master Mason this third time, the villain, who is armed with a heavy maul, right, it's like it's like a handle that you use, and it has a big mat on the end. So it's like a boxing glove with a handle, like it's leather and this cushion on the inside. So, and he uses that, but in the drama, so in the story, the narrative is actually, he has a maul, which is, again, it's think of a mallet, right? So that's what he's actually hitting Hiram with in the drama. So this is a fatal blow. He doesn't, like the other 2 ruffians who miss him. This one hits him dead on, and he gives him a fatal blow to the forehead with this, basically a mallet, a hammer. So having killed their master, Jubilo, Jubilat, and Jubilum now have to figure out what to do with the body. And this is always what happens after any murder. You have to figure out what to do with the body. This is the most important thing, right? So these guys are, frankly, idiots, right? So they decide to bury it under a pile of rubble for now, but later move it outside the city and bury it in a shallow grave that they're going to mark with a sprig of acacia. Right. So the next day, King Solomon is confused why the craftsmen are wandering around the temple and not working. And the workmen tell King Solomon that they're wandering aimlessly because there are no building plans on a trestle board or on a drawing board. Therefore, they don't know what to do. Alarmed by this news, King Solomon sends out a group of fellow crafts to search for Hiram Abiff. It also just happens that one of the search parties finds the sprig of acacia on top of a pile of rubble and a body underneath it. After investigating the corpse, they discover that it was the slain body of their master, Hiram Abiff. They also found 3 ruffians that killed him nearby. So these guys, they buried a body, they mark it in a way that people can find it. This just inconspicuous sprig of acacia, right, on top of a mound. And then somehow they're like nearby because criminals. You watch all the movies. The criminals are always right there, right? Criminals always somehow pass up the scene of the crime. They didn't want to see what's going on, right? So true to form, the murderers are there, hiding nearby, for they have been unable to escape because they didn't have the password to leave the country. So in the drama of the story, after they bury Hiram Abiff the second time, they're trying to get out of the country. And there's a wayfarer there, a man with a boat, who is willing to give them passage out the country, but they don't have the password to get out. So they're stuck. Okay. So upon returning to the temples, the ruffians confess to their crimes and are taken away or never heard from again. So we never know what happens to Jubilo, Jubila, or Jubilum. So seeing the body of Hiram Abiff lay lifeless on the ground, King Solomon attempts to raise him 3 times from the dead. So what's going on in the drama? King Solomon's there. I think he's typically paid by the worshipful master. And so there's, they usually use a candidate for this. So the candidate is laying on the ground, and he takes the candidate by a hand and uses, I think, two different grips to try to raise him. First, he uses the grip of an insert apprentice, and his hand slips. Then he uses the secret handshake of a fellow craft, and his hand slips from the body. So the last time, he gives him the strong grip of a master mason, which is like a lion's paw. All right. And then he raises him up that way. Okay. Actually, he gives him a grip before he gives him a strong grip of a lion's paw. He gives him another one, and that one fails as well. Okay. So there's 3 grips that fail. And so he's unable to raise him from the dead. But eventually there has to be a substitute for the master mason word. So he raises up Hiram Abiff, now the candidate, who's like Hiram Abiff, a type of Hiram Abiff reincarnated in a sense. And he raises him up with a strong grip of a lion's paw, and he gives him the secrets of a master mason, the substitute word. And this is Anglo-Masonry. I'm talking about continental, a little bit different at this point. So, but back to the story, back to the drama. So after the grip fails and he's unable to raise him, right? Now that one of only 2 of the 3 people in the entire world who knew a portion of the secrets of Master Mason dead, King Solomon decrees that the secrets of a Master Mason are lost. And so here's when he replaces him with a substitute. And that's how I explained the strong grip of a lion's paw. He gives them, the secret of the substitute name of God. So, but in continental Freemasonry, the secrets are not lost. But so that no one ever tries to obtain them unlawfully, King Solomon orders them to be buried under the temple, inscribed on Hiram's grave. And then he creates a substitute for them instead. So in both systems, in one system, the secrets are forever lost. In the other system, the secrets are buried, right? So if King Solomon had raised Hiram from the dead, Freemasonry could, and also before I get to that, I would say that, so in the drama, departs from scripture in a number of ways. As you see in scripture, there's no Hiram Abiff, but also in Freemasonry, the temple was never completed because Hiram Abiff is dead. So in the scriptures, we know King Solomon's temple was completed, but Freemasons here are offering an alternative story that actually King Solomon's temple was never completed because the master builder died. Okay. But if King Solomon had raised Hiram Abiff from the dead, Freemasonry could have never been charged with being a denier of the supernatural. But he was not, nor does Freemasonry rely on any source of truth beyond what can be known by the 5 human senses. And this aspect of Freemasonry is this aspect of Freemasonry that compelled Pope Leo XIII in his encyclical Humani Genus in Custody di Quella Fede to declare that naturalism is the core principle of the Masonic sect. So outside of the subordinate lodge, some appendant Masonic bodies continue this emblematic myth. For example, in the Mark Master degree, often called the 4th degree, and in which in some jurisdictions is a whole different autonomous house. In other systems, the mark degree is part of the Royal Arch House or the Holy Royal Arch Houses. The candidate learns that before Hiram Abiff's assassination, he was charged to make a keystone. Right, a keystone. This keystone has great significance in for the lessons that the Mark Master degree intends to convey. And wherever the ancient accepted Scottish Rite is an appendant body to Grand Lodge, only the 4th to 3rd degrees are worth in that jurisdiction. And like I said, but there are some jurisdictions in which some subordinate lodges do work the ancient acceptant rites version of the Master Mason degree, and their degree would be in line with what happens that's in ancient acceptance Scottish Rite. The secrets of a Master Mason are lost. Okay, so they would use the Anglo version of this story. Okay, so that's the Master Mason degree in points of indifferentism. Okay, so in indifferentism we see. So what in there? What is in the Master Mason degree? The legend of Hiram Abiff seems indifferent. Well, the principal thing is that there's something that the Master Mason is now in search of. Okay. In that journey, what Freemasons would call traveling from east to west, from west to east, of being in search of that which was lost, it smells like Gnosticism, right? It smells like indifferentism. So what was lost? And what is the Freemason in search of? Okay, so the path to salvation and the path to the Freemason try to discover what is lost, again, are mutually exclusive. These are not the same path. Okay, so following Christ, who is the fullness of truth, in which nothing is lost, and following the journey of a Freemason to discover what was lost, this Gnosticism, are two completely different paths that are completely incompatible with one another. So you cannot call yourself a Freemason and a Catholic, or even a Freemason and a Christian, I would say. But there's the issue there. Protestants don't really have any source of authority, so how can you bind them to this teaching? But just logically, if you're a Freemason in search of what was lost, why are you? What did you lose if you have Jesus? What Jesus goes after the lost sheep. So how are you lost? And what was lost? What were you in search of? It just makes no sense, right? The philosophies in the drama. Also, the story, right? That the King Solomon's temple actually wasn't completed. So it sort of makes a mockery of Christ, when he comes along and says, and tear down this building and build it up again in 3 days. Okay. So from the Freemason perspective, the temple was never completed. So how can Jesus tear it down and build it back up? So the Freemason is always on the road of wanting to finish the work that Hiram Abiff began and to finish the temple, right? Because if he discovers what is lost, then he can come back and finish building the temple. So the work is never done. Whereas with the Christian, he knows that with Jesus Christ, the work is finished, right? It's done. It's completed. His death, burial, and resurrection. And Jesus Christ is, his body is the temple, right? And we're resurrected. We're raised in that body of Christ. So the building is complete. It's done. Christ is the new temple. So the position of the Freemasons is really just like, again, antithetical to what we as Christians believe, right? So both things cannot be true. Either the building is completed, the temple is completed, or it's not. For Christians, it is. It's Jesus Christ. And Paul even goes further. He says, your body is a temple. But for Freemasons, the temple is just it's never completed. It's just always an unfinished work. And so really it offers this idea that Freemasonry, that Christianity is insufficient, right? That it doesn't have all the answers, that is lacking, okay? And Freemasonry has the answer as to why it's lacking. In naturalism, to recap again, so Jesus, the church is teaching that God is the source and life of all that is good, and he's source of everything, and he's the source of our life and all that is good. And that again, we're on that pilgrimage. We're on a journey like a Freemason, but we know the path. we know where we're going. Nothing is secret. Nothing is lost. Nothing is hidden. So, and we're on the same path of the communion of saints. We know which way to go. We know the narrow way. It's quite clear. Right? It's difficult, but quite clear. So we're on that pilgrimage, and we know where we're headed. We know our final destination. And the sacraments, the signs that Christ Jesus left on earth, order us to the eternal Father through grace and help us to order everything that is good back to Him. Right. So this is really, again, the point of the liturgy. When we lead a liturgy, we receive Jesus Christ, and then we're dismissed into the world, so that we might be in the world who we received in the liturgy, and so that we may give away to the world who we have received through the liturgy, so that the world will be oriented to Christ. Like the world itself becomes a type of sacred space in order to God. But naturalism is just really looking to, naturalism, what can I perceive by my senses, right? And this is why remember that in the Fellowcraft degree, the 5 steps of Freemasonry, you have 3, 5, and 7 steps. The 5 steps are the 5 human senses. And you ascend through those steps, and now you're ready for the 7 steps: grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, astronomy, to understand those things. So it's just all naturalism. And so naturalism looks to nature as the source, as the original source of everything, and that exists, and attempts to use it to explain everything and our purpose. It tries to use nature to explain the primordial questions of who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? Why is there something other than nothing? So the primordial questions that every human being have asked from the beginning. Freemasonry, then the person who's practicing naturalism tries to answer the primordial questions just through the senses, right? But as Christians, we believe that the primordial questions, though difficult to answer before Christ, because we knew there was a God, yet we didn't have a relationship with Him. We did not have His indwelling. So our relationship with God seemed to be always quite distant. We didn't even have a name of God, right? We had, I am who I am, which is like a sentence, right? It's a declarative statement. So through Christ and His church, 2 new equations enter that equation and resolve it, right? 2 new terms rather enter the equation as Christ and His church, which solves the equation of who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? Well, we're headed towards our final destination, and Christ is our bridge to get there. And through Him, ourselves and the Father, our relationship is never broken again as it was in the beginning with the original sin. And it's through the sacraments of the church. That's why it's Christ in His church, through the sacraments of the church, through which I'm able to stay on that bridge and to cross over and to stay in union, in communion with God. So 2 different things, naturalism and Catholicism. So with Freemasonry leans heavily into Catholicism, as we've seen throughout. In particular, in the 3rd degree, the new working tool, right? The working tool is how Freemasonry really reinforces this idea of naturalism through self-determinationism. So the new working tool for the Master Mason is the trial. And they're taught that the trial is the instrument made use of operative Masons to spread the cement and they're taught to make use of it for a more noble and glorious purpose of spreading the semen of brotherly love and affection. And that semen which unites us into one sacred band or a society of friends and brothers, among whom no contention should ever exist, but that noble contention, or rather emulation, of who best can work and best agree. So again, harmony is this idea that harmony can exist if we just get rid of religious differences. If we just get rid of political differences, we can really just focus on the work of Freemasonry, and just this will bind us together. All right. So this making of Freemasonry into this religion of naturalism is what is supposed to keep Freemasonry, which is supposed to really just heal the world in a sense through Freemasonry and spread the semen of brotherly love. And so, and this so who can argue that Freemasonry has been around since the 1700s with this new religion? The problem is that, well, Freemasonry quite understands well that it cannot coexist in the world with the church, right? And so this is why Freemasonry invades against the church. So it knows, it just naturally knows that both of these things cannot be true. As long as the Catholic Church is there, there's always going to be something blocking the reordering of the world in this image of Freemasonry. All right. But this idea of universal brotherhood that we see, even someone like Pope Francis seems to embrace this idea of indifferentism. He repeatedly talks about this universal brotherhood, right? This false ecumenism that we see in Freemasonry. Pope Francis has embraced quite fully. Okay. I mean, obviously he's not a Freemason, but he's what I call a Masonic ally. Okay. Because he embraces key principle of Freemasonry, indifferentism. Okay. But there's no path forward here for Freemasonry to end in a way that's beneficial to itself or to its members, because this path of universal brotherhood outside of Christ, it inevitably leads to a brotherhood with Satan. Now, the oaths of the Master Mason degree is quite long, as you see. You're going to have to probably download the PowerPoint really to see this, because I see the text is rather small. But the reason why it's so long, because the Master Mason is taking he makes a lot more promises than he did in the previous degrees. So, and you see there's a number of furthermore, I promise, furthermore. So he even says, I will not sit in the lodge of clandestine made masons, nor converse on a subject masonry with a clandestine made mason. Right. So it's just all of these things that one is binding themselves to. In the end, the punishments, saying, I'll have my bowels taken thence and buried and burned in ashes and scattered to the four winds of heaven, and that no remembrance of me shall be ever had. So that's quite a grievous punishment, that my bowels torn open and taken thence and burned to ash and thrown to the four winds of heaven, and so that no remembrance may be had of me. So huge problem for Pope Clement the 12th. Like, what is their prime? And so help me God and keep me steadfast if I ever do any of these things that I've obligated myself to. So what does not speaking with clandestine Masons have to do with the gospel, or have to do with Christ? Further, I will acknowledge and obey all due signs and summonses sent to me from the lodge, right? So we've seen popes talked about this, how if a person has I think Leo was talking about this, I think Leo the 13th. So there's an issue here. If the lodge is summoning a member, you have to be there. What if it's on a holy day of obligation? So So the Freemason is bound to obey the summons from the lodge on a day of holy obligation, puts in a position of violating his oath with the Freemasons. So you can't take an oath like this that's going to interfere with your relationship with God. Furthermore, I will keep I will keep a worthy brother Master Mason's secrets inviolable when communicate to me or see to me as such. So so if a Master Mason comes to another Master Mason and says, "Hey, I have a secret I need you to keep," the Master Mason is required to keep it, except under conditions of murder and treason. Okay. Again, this is incompatible with Christianity, right? There may be a secret here that you shouldn't be obliged to keep. Just because it's not murder or treason, what about rape? All right. What about some molestation going on? Okay. What about theft? Hmm. So so you shouldn't. So these the obligations to keep secrets, which are not healthy. Again, incompatible with any notion of Christianity. All right. So, but it's a lot there. If you want to read it, definitely download the PowerPoint slide. So that is the end of our foundational courses on the degrees. Now we have two more foundational courses left, but about 10 lectures altogether. Again, two of those which are going to be foundational, and then we're going to start with this. One of the second to the last foundational lecture, foundational course is going to be on a papal bull in enmity by Pope Clement the 12th. It's the first one. It's the first blood, so to speak, and it's the basis upon the Masonic band. So we're going to dig into that next course. So before you continue, if you would like, I definitely encourage you, go ahead and take the quiz to reinforce some of the things that you learn here. And then you'll be prepared to move on to what we're going to get into next. Really is more so the political reasons why Freemasonry is banned. So we're going to see Freemasonry over the next next 9 courses. Really, all these revolutions are coming on. The Catholic Church is threatened politically by the export of Freemasonry. We'll still talk a little bit about the theological reasons, but for the most part, you've been grounded in the theological reasons. You've had your masterclass series on that, so you should understand what's going on. What the issue is here with Freemasonry being a religion, incompatible with Catholicism, having sacraments which promote the heresies of indifferentism, naturalism, and also these oaths, which are completely incompatible. So thank you. And let's continue the real work of being one in Christ. I'll see you next time.